Okay, I want to carry on with the demo for Crystal Reports and assigning the Crystal Reports data source at runtime. This is applicable to assignment 8 from DC Connect, and certainly most applicable to your perfect crease case where you have to create an application that displays one of two different, possibly different reports. So one of the first things you're going to have to do, I just put this over here, I'm posting this on DC Connect. This is the link to the install package for Crystal Reports 2010. This is the latest release that I could find, the latest free release that I could find, and I have tested it in both VB and C#, and it is working well with Visual Studio 2012. It adds all the DLLs to connect Crystal Reports to Visual Studio for you. So that's on DC Connect. You're going to need that first off. And once you do have that, I'm just going to bring over a new application here. We're going to start an application, a new project inside Visual Studio. C# application. So the very first thing, if we go back over here, so create the data set. So I'm actually ahead of things a little bit, because if I just step back here to the grander scheme of things, right? I've got a few things I've got to take care of in terms of getting ready. So first off, I've got to create that solution. So I've just created a solution, right? And now I'm going to build the data set. So these are the larger steps, and then I'm going to get into the minutia of building the data set, mostly as review, and then adding the report designer. The interesting thing, when you're developing this application for Perfect Crease, you're going to actually have a couple of forms. You're going to have this form that has the report viewer on it, and then you're going to have what I always used to call a switchboard. Bill tells me that there's a different name for that now, but basically you're going to have that navigation form that will allow you options. You're either going to have option buttons or command buttons, or some way for the user of the application to select which of the two reports for Perfect Crease need to be displayed. And then of course you will show this form, which will eventually have a report viewer on it. So this form is strictly for the report viewer. So as such, I also want to affect the window state. So I'm going to say run this maximized, so it fills the screen. Okay, so far so good. The only thing I've got to do now, before I get going on the Crystal Reports, I want to add a new data source. You should be familiar with adding a data source to a project in VB, at least, if nothing else. So data source configuration wizard. This looks very similar to the graphics that are supplied in the slides from the 2010 version for VB. So I want a data set, and of course I want a new connection. This should be Microsoft SQL Server database file. You're not actually connecting to a SQL Server. You're connecting to a SQL Server database file. And you have only one choice. It's the .NET Framework Data Provider for SQL Server. We say OK, and this is the dialog you should see. And now I can browse, right? And then test the connection. And we're good. So we've got that. We're using Windows Authentication. There's nothing else needed. If your dialog at this point doesn't look like this, you are on the wrong data source type, and you want to make sure you go back and change that. So here we go. It grinds away for a bit, and then we say OK. The connection you've selected uses a local data file that's not in the current project. Would you like to copy the file to your project and modify the connection? Well, I would most certainly like to copy the file to my project, because when I submit this thing for marking, I want to make sure that the person marking it gets the database, the connection string, the form, the whole bit. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes on this. I'm not going to modify the connection, but I am, of course, going to include the database file itself right in this project. So we say yes. And then I'm happy to save the connection as MMA Books connection string. If you look over here at Solution Explorer right now, you can see that MMA Books.mdf has been added to the solution. So, yep, I'm good with that. Okay, so I'm going to expand tables, and I know I could probably pick through these. And when you look at the assignment, you might want to pick, just the fields you're going to need. But I'm just going to select customers and invoices and take all the fields, and I'm good to go. I'm going to finish this. There, I've got my data set, right, ready to go. If I take a look at Solution Explorer, there's my data set. I've got two built-in table adapters, one for customers and one for invoices. I'm going to access these table adapters in code to set the runtime state of my viewer. Okay, so I can close this now, and I think I'm ready to add a report. So the first thing I do, so I just want to go back over here. So I've created the data set. Now I've got to add the crystal report, and what you're actually doing is adding that report designer to your project. So select your project, right click, add, and I'm going to go new item. And if I go down here to reporting, I should see Crystal Reports. This is a Crystal Reports file that publishes data to a Windows or web form. Don't use the report or report wizard. Those are Visual Studio Report and Report Wizard, and they're a little bit more terse. They're actually a lot more terse than the Crystal Reports tool. So now's a good time as any to give this a decent name too, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to use the report wizard for sure, and I just want a standard report. And now I start skipping through the wizard here. So you want to make sure you go to project data, right? It's here. And you're going to go to ADO.NET datasets. And here's your two tables that you selected, the two table adapters that you have available in the data set. So I'm going to select them both and send them both over, and then go next. This screen gives you an opportunity to either add or modify the relationship. The link between customers and customer invoices intuitively is picked up by the wizard as customer ID, and we're happy. Next on this. Now I can pick the fields that I want to display. So these are different fields. I can go one at a time. I don't think I want customer ID, but I will take name, address, or I can simply take them all. There we go, and send those over. From invoices, there's not a heck of a lot that I want in terms of the information to display. What I am going to want is the total of all the invoices. So I'm just going to skip next for this. And this is grouping. So what do I want to group this by? Well, I want to group it by customer. So I'll definitely group by customer in ascending order. Summaries. Optional summary information to report. Well, I want the total. In fact, for this one, I think the assignment just asked for the total, but I'm going to add a couple of things. I'm going to say invoice ID and invoice total. Let's put those over there. And down here, I want the sum of invoices. Yeah, but I'm going to count. I'm actually going to count the number of invoices. So for each customer, I'm going to have 3 invoices and a total for the group section. Group that'll be sorted, customer name, group ordering. No, I'm good just like this. I've already set the sort order. There's no top or bottom. I don't want a chart. I'm just going to go next, and now I get to pick my table style. So I can have a leading break, a trailing break, drop table. One of my other examples has a drop table, so I won't use that one. I'll use shading. There we go with shape. There's your report designer. And I'm leaving this window open. And this should look familiar because this is very similar to what you see when you're working with Access. So you've got the report, you've got all the different sections. There's a report header section, page header section. You've got the group header section. So for each group, okay, it's going to be the customer, and then the section details. Well, in this case, we're having customers as the group header. I don't think we need the customer name in the details, right? Group footer. And then we could repeat the name, but I don't think we need to. And we're going to have the count of invoices and the sum of invoices. And all the same things as you're used to working with in Access. You can move all these fields around. And then we've got a grand total, right, in terms of the count and number of invoices. We've already got a page number. You can size these sections. So the report header at the very top, we might want to add. In fact, the requirement says you've got to insert. In this case, let's put a text object. You've got to put your name somewhere up here. So I'm going to say, okay, let's do this, and I'll put my name in here, and then maybe I want another text object. Plunk it in there, and I'll say customer invoices. Of course, you can play around with font and sizing and everything. This is going to be downright ugly. I believe there's something else I was looking for. Oh yeah, the date. We need a date field up on here, so you can insert a particular field. So there's special fields, print date, print time, all these cool things, report title, all this. One of the things that you get with Crystal Reports is this main report preview. And as I mentioned, when you're creating a report that's going to be connected to a Crystal Report Viewer at runtime, you won't get the actual data in the preview. But what it does do is it generates words like blue, olive, red, Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday. It generates content to help you get a feel for what your report's going to look like. The best way to preview whether or not you've got the columns lined up and your fields are all big enough. You can see this one's trimming the actual name here, address with one S, zip code. The only way to do it when we're going to create reports this way is to actually run these things. So that's setting up. I'm going to go back over here to the main report. And I'm just going to get back over here to Solution Explorer and pin this. We've got our Crystal Reports project. Close some of these things. We've got a form. We've got a data set. And now I've got my customer invoices report ready to go. So in the next video, I'm actually going to demo some of the finished versions, a VB and a couple C# versions, or a couple C# and a VB version, and show you the code behind those forms to connect everything.